Hey there everyone, welcome back to the Ocarina of Time Dungeon Guide. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Spirit Temple. This is a very unique dungeon in that we will be visiting it both as child and adult Link. And in addition to that, there's also 2 items to be found here, rather than the usual one, if any. So as we begin, we'll be coming over here to the left-hand side, and we will be talking to Nabooru here. She's going to ask us to go find the Silver Gauntlets, because she has some sort of plans to sabotage Ganondorf, this, that, or the other thing. So we'll say, yeah, sure, man, whatever. And we will agree and crawl through this hole, and we will begin the Spirit Temple. In this first room here, there's a locked door. It's kind of around the corner. We can't see it yet, but we open that door by eliminating all of the enemies. So there's a few bats on the wall there. 2 of them are flying around. And even after killing all of the bats, there's still one more enemy. It's actually that statue in the middle. That's that Armos enemy. That is one of the ones that will chase you when you touch it. Or in this case, hit it with a bomb. So I'm going to give it a little present there. And apparently it's not satisfied with just one, so we'll drop another one. And again, watch out for those guys. They will, as you can see, turn red, start spinning around all crazy, and sort of do a suicide attack at you. So make sure you get away from them before they blow you sky high. And here's something sort of interesting. We got a Stalfoss to fight here. This is the first time, and I think the only time you fight Stalfoss as Child Link. Guy looks absolutely huge, and we actually sort of lucked out there. Normally they don't fall off the ledges. And that fight is actually a pretty tough one because the Kokiri sword does, half the damage of the Master Sword, so that fight kind of goes on for a while, just because that's kind of an enemy that's designed for adult Link. Anyway, though, we will hit that switch there by sort of curving the boomerang around that bridge that was lowered. Before it lowered, it was sort of in the way of that switch, so we couldn't hit it with, the slingshot or something. In here we have an interesting enemy called an Anubis, kind of from Egyptian mythology, I think. And it's sort of unique in that it sort of mirrors where your location in the room. So there was a switch over there that we can hit that creates a ring of fire there. And depending on if we position ourselves right here and activate that ring of fire again, because I sort of ran out of time, there you go. It'll actually burn away that enemy and open the door. You can also use Din's Fire, but I wanted to show that off at least once. Otherwise, I don't believe you can hurt those guys. We will be seeing a couple of those later on when we revisit the dungeon as adult. And if you're playing as adult Link, you can damage those guys with fire arrows. Point being, fire hurts them. Whether it's the Ring of Fire on the ground, Din's Fire, or fire arrows, you can take those guys out. Coming in here, we've got a few different enemies to deal with. One of those wall masters there. That one, oddly enough, didn't split into the smaller wall masters. Kind of an interesting enemy. Sometimes they're invisible, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they split into multiple hands, sometimes they don't. We just can't really decide what they want to be, huh? Anyway, moving on, we got some silver rupees to collect. By collecting all of these, it will sort of lower this middle section of this chain link fence thing. And that will act as a bridge for us to cross. And there's also some unlit torches on the other side of the gap. So I'm going to bring a burning Deku Stick with me. And I didn't quite get that second one lit. Luckily, of course, you can relight a Deku Stick from the torch that you just lit. Having lit both of those, a small chest will appear with a small key inside. That will be useful when we re-enter. This is kind of looping back around where we were before. This is that room where that Armos was. There was those 2 doors that opened up when we killed all of the enemies. And heading through the middle down through this hole here, there was the locked door. That was kind of why we needed to go into those side rooms. Now we have a key to get through this one. There's these little boxes on the side here. And those have Deku Nuts and bombs in there. Very useful. Coming in here, starting out, we'll have this wall to climb, covered in Skulltulas. That one's going to dodge all the shots like Neo. But eventually we'll get it. Climb on up. And this is kind of where we're going to start seeing some, I guess, light-based puzzles. I kind of get a kick out of these puzzles because apparently during the development of Ocarina of Time there was going to be a light temple. If you recall, there was Rauru. He was the Sage of Light. We met him first when we became Adult Link for the first time, and he gave us the Medallion of Light. Apparently, there was going to be a whole temple where you messed around with light, and that's how you were going to get the Light Medallion originally, but I guess that was scrapped due to time constraints, I would assume. But here in the Spirit Temple, we're going to see some puzzles using light, like this one right here. There's sort of a rock, and we got some bomb chews in a chest. And when we blow that up, the light comes through and opens the door. But yeah, kind of interesting. I believe I would assume that these are sort of repurposed puzzles. These would have been seen in that temple. Again, you heard me say it in the Shadow Temple video. I love hearing about cut content. I find it sort of interesting. Anyway, though, moving into this room right here, we've got a giant statue, a lot of staircases, a lot of different ways we can go. A lot of these pathways we actually cannot get through as Child Link, so come over here and stand on this platform and use Din's fire to light these torches. And that will spawn a large chest for us, and the map will be inside. I believe, I could be wrong about this, I hope I'm not wrong about this, but I believe you can collect this either as Adult Link or Child Link. There are certain portions of the dungeon that you can only go as Child Link, and there are certain portions of the dungeon that you can only go as Adult Link. This room is sort of an overlapping area. You can actually come here as Child or Adult. And I know the open chest will be there as we re-enter the dungeon as Adult Link, so I'm assuming you can collect it as Adult. Anyway, moving on though, we saw that blue switch down there. That's one of those momentary switches, and that unlocks this door up here, so we can push that statue to weigh it down, because otherwise, if we step on it and step off, the door will lock itself again. And in this room right here, we've got a whole bunch of stuff going on. There's actually 3 different objectives that we can complete in here, if you can believe it. One is silver rupees. If we collect all the silver rupees, one of the torches will spawn, which will help us light all of the other torches, which is like a second objective, if you will. And the third one is actually going to be one of those suns, those little, let's call them a light sensor. There's actually going to be some blocks over here that we can push around, and there's going to be one of those light sensors on top of that. I believe Past Me is going to collect these silver rupees first. Yes, indeed. And again, that's going to light, there's one of those golden or yellow torches that stay lit. It was sort of just inside that door there. We will be revisiting that once we collect all of the rupees. This one here we get to jump for. So it was sort of out of sight there, but yes, there is now a torch lit. And it looks like I'm going to take the opportunity, since I'm standing right here, to deal with this puzzle. There isn't much to this. The block that we want is just sort of buried back there behind the other blocks, but otherwise we can just pull this one right out. And after doing this a couple of times, I realized that you don't need to push it to the side at all. If you just continue to pull it, just keep on going, eventually it will get hit by the sun. And yes, I know that because I'm lazy, and I guess pushing it to the side is more work somehow, in some way. Anyway, that face being very happy to be hit by the light. I wish I could be that happy standing in the sun. I guess I grin like that when I'm indoors. I'm like the opposite of that switch. Anyway, though, dumb jokes aside, we're going to go ahead and start lighting these torches now. I'd like to light that one and then put away the burning stick and grab another one, because it's kind of a stretch to come all the way over here without the stick burning away to nothing. There you go, there's 3 torches there, sort of around the outside of the room. And by doing that, this small chest will spawn, kind of up here on this wall sort of thing. And inside there's going to be a small key, which is good because in the very next room there's going to be a locked door. I kind of appreciate when, the key is pretty close to the door. I don't like searching all over the dungeon for that one small key. Some of the earlier dungeons in the game are kind of like that. Anyway, though, we have a mini-boss here. This is Iron Knuckle. We're actually going to see a few of these in the Spirit Temple. The first one I would say is probably the hardest because you're fighting it as Child Link. I'm going to go ahead and take a tremendous amount of damage. Iron Knuckle does a lot of damage. But yes, with the Kikiri sword, it's kind of like it takes twice as long. Did that deal 4 hearts of damage? My goodness. Luckily, as you can sort of bait attacks from Iron Knuckle to hit these brick columns, and all of them drop a bunch of hearts, which is good. I'm not even entirely sure if Past Me is aware that if I got hit here, I would actually die. But basically the way I like to deal with Iron Knuckle is I like to bait an attack and then jump slash in and then sort of backflip out. You see me eating at least a couple of attacks there. The mistake that I'm making is I'm starting with the jump slash without baiting an attack first. See, there you go. Much better. You just gain a little bit of extra time when you jump in right at the end of his attack. And as you can see, we've actually peeled away some of his armor and he actually starts to run, which is pretty scary, considering, again, how much damage he deals. Just a couple more hits there. There he goes. And like I said, we will be fighting Iron Knuckle a couple more times in Spirit, but we will be doing it as Adult Link. And I do believe it's a little bit easier as Adult Link, mostly because of the reach that the Master Sword has. You know, that Kakiri sword is just a little butter knife. It just doesn't really have a whole lot of length to it. And anyway, as we exit through this door right here, we're actually going to find ourselves outside, and we're going to see a familiar face. There's Kapura Gaibora. We actually haven't seen him in quite a while at this point in the game, and he's actually going to be sort of telling us goodbye. That's going to be the last conversation that we have with him in Ocarina of Time. So here I am shedding a single tear for our big owl buddy. We will certainly miss him saying a whole bunch of stuff and then asking us if we want him to repeat it and then accidentally saying yes and then having to read it all again. But in any case, there are the Silver Gauntlets. These, of course, are not something that we can use as Child Link. They're supposed to go back to Nabooru, because we agreed to give those to her. But unfortunately, we're going to get a cutscene right here of her being kidnapped by the boss of the Spirit Temple. I'm going to go ahead and skip through that, just because there's no gameplay involved. But yeah, at this point, Link's just going to be like, okay, well, I guess I'll just keep those Silver Gauntlets. And what I'm going to do now, this is now the end of the child portion of Spirit Temple. So I'm going to go ahead and play the Prelude of Light, head back to the Temple of Time, turn back to Adult Link, and then we will begin the adult section of the Spirit Temple. So I've gone ahead and skipped ahead. We are now Adult Link, and we've got those pretty sweet-looking Silver Gauntlets on. Those are going to allow us to move some pretty large objects here in the Spirit Temple. I say that, but actually, now that I think about it, there may only be this one big block in the entrance of the Spirit Temple. We'll see if I'm forgetting anything. But yes, here we are. This is a familiar room. We were just here a little while ago as Child Link. That's where we saw Nabooru over there. And yes, this is a huge block that we wouldn't normally have been able to push even as Adult Link. But since we've got those Silver Gauntlets, they've given us the strength to push this thing all the way down into this hole that's over here. And we will be able to move on again to the adult section of the Spirit Temple. Here in this first room, all we really got to do is hit this switch that's hanging from the ceiling, and that's going to open some doors on the left and right hand side of that locked door there. So before we can move on, we'll be looking for a small key, and in this room right here, we're going to find these boulders that are sort of perpetually rolling around with some silver rupees to collect. Be careful as you enter these little nooks here, the camera suddenly snaps around. It can be kind of disorienting. There's a Song of Time block there. We don't need to be opening that up. There's a gold Skulltula behind it. This is not the gold Skulltula guide. Make sure to stay tuned for that. It should be on my channel relatively soon, if it's not already by the time you watch this. I somehow managed to pass basically directly through that silver rupee there. That's okay. We'll be able to grab that using the hover boots. I do believe if maybe I had taken a few steps back, I would have had the angle needed to grab that silver rupee as I hookshot it onto that wall. I could be wrong, though. Either way, the hover boots, of course, will work, as you can see. You can hear something making a spooky noise off to the right-hand side as we collect that key. It's a like. I don't know if that thing was, like, hanging from the ceiling or what. I don't know if it was just, like, hanging in the air as you enter that room and it just suddenly falls. I don't know. But there we go. We got the small key, but there was also another door on the other side of that locked door there. So we'll come on over here, and in here we're actually going to find the compass, which we have yet to collect. Got a single wolf in here. As always, they're not too bad to deal with. If you sort of bait an attack, they'll do their sort of 1-2 swipe and then spin around and expose their back, and then you can jump slash at them, taking them out in one hit. Otherwise, there's a Triforce symbol on the ground. We're going to do the usual thing and play Zelda's Lullaby, which is going to drop a large chest from somewhere in the rafters. Opening this up, like I mentioned, we're going to find the compass inside. Always nice to have. We can see where all the chests are on the map. We can see that there's no chests here in this room, so we'll go ahead and head back out. I've never really been able to put my finger on why, but I've always liked that room with like the pool of sand down there. Kind of felt like there needed to be some enemies down there, though. Anyway, coming through the locked door now, another like is going to fall from out of the ceiling. Over here we've got a tall wall to climb. You, of course, can use the hook shot to pull yourself basically all the way to the top of this thing. Past me has apparently forgotten that that's a thing. And up here we've got a room with a lot of those sun light switches, light sensors. And we've got a mirror that we can rotate around, as well as an invisible wall master. I believe you can see this guy if you use the Eye of Truth, but I usually just sort of, you can kind of see where the enemy is with the little marker that Navi puts over enemies. I'm doing quick spins there. Grabbing some magic because I was getting kind of low, and I know that I'm going to be using Din's Fire here in a second. Rotating this mirror around, we're to spawn some chests. These are sort of filler items. I don't remember what's in these chests, but it'll probably be things like, you know, Deku Nuts or something like that. Maybe some arrows. Hitting that one right there apparently will unlock the door. So we will do that and head on forward. And here we are in that big statue room again, so that's kind of cool. We've kind of come full circle. It's kind of fun to think of that there was a child Link running around in here 7 years ago. Got a locked door up here. And we can actually see that there's a Triforce symbol on the palms of one of those hands on the statue. So we'll go ahead and equip the hover boots. And you can just barely reach that. We'll go ahead and play Zelda's Lullaby yet again. And what that's going to do is spawn a small chest on the other hand. And we will be able to cross the gap by using the hook shot. I'm doing a C-up, kind of looking down at that center door over there that's currently locked. We're not going to be going down there. I believe what is down there is yet another gold Skulltula. I think that whole leg of the dungeon is just for a gold Skulltula. So we'll have to check that out in the gold Skulltula guide. And in any case, I'll hop back down here, kind of stand in the middle of the room, and just barely be able to reach this torch with the hook shot. It's kind of funny, sometimes the red dot does not appear, like when you're really hitting something that's just barely in range for the hook shot, sometimes the red dot doesn't appear. So don't always assume that you can't reach something just because the dot isn't there. Coming up this staircase here and entering this room, we'll find a few more of those Anubis enemies. And if you recall, I said that you can take these guys out using fire arrows or Din's Fire. The first time we saw them, we went ahead and used the Ring of Fire. Oh, yes, I fell off on accident there. That was funny. I hit that edge and I started hanging off, and I pressed A to climb back up, but you actually press A to fall. You drop down on purpose sometimes in the game, right? So I fell down on accident into the void there. But yes, as you can see, using Din's Fire, you can take these guys out pretty easily. There's a switch on the ground in this room that does create a Ring of Fire. I kind of forget where in the room it is, but you can, of course, once you get that Ring of Fire going, you can sort of move around and the Anubis enemies will sort of mirror you, and you can kind of force them into the Ring of Fire and take them out that way. But as you can see, Din's Fire, much, much easier. Coming in here, we've got a pretty annoying room. All of these statues are the living Armos enemies. And we have a momentary switch here, and normally this is where we would push one of these statues onto that switch. But unfortunately, they're all alive, and they all move. So what you kind of got to do is you kind of need to bait them over here. I kind of like to pull them to the far side of the switch. And then I go for it. And then I basically pray that one of them stands on the switch for a split second. Maybe, there it is. There it is. And then you quickly get to go. Go, quick, go. Before they jump off again. So that actually went pretty well. Sometimes that room is sort of a nightmare. It's like herding cats. And we're actually going to be fighting another Iron Knuckle here, so I'm going to go ahead and grab these invisible chests. They've just got some simple hearts inside. And I believe this fight goes quite a bit better than my previous Iron Knuckle fight. Like I said, the Master Sword is much longer, and it deals more damage. So overall, a little bit safer here. Again, I sort of like to bait and attack, jump slash in, and then backflip out. I'm also kind of wondering if maybe Adult Link jumps further. Like his body is larger, so maybe when he jump slashes in and backflips out, maybe he covers more distance than Child Link does. I'm actually not entirely sure about that. But in any case, we will be opening this door here and heading out. This is sort of the opposite side where we found the Silver Gauntlets. And there's actually going to be another item here. Yeah, there's the open chest there. It's just been hanging out there for, again, 7 years. So yes, like I said, the Spirit Temple has 2 big items in it, which is pretty dang cool. And this, of course, is the Mirror Shield, which is an awesome-looking item. And unlike, maybe some of the boots in the game, you can kind of equip this shield and just leave it on for the rest of the game. Hover boots, it's kind of a pain to be running around with those all game. I guess you could do it, but the Mirror Shield, pretty much no reason not to just wear it forever. Oddly enough, the Mirror Shield actually doesn't reflect certain projectiles. The Hylian Shield, like Octoroks, for one, the little rocks that they shoot, for some reason when those projectiles hit the Mirror Shield, they just get destroyed instantly, which is sort of ironic considering it's the Mirror Shield. You'd think that it would be really, really good at reflecting projectiles. It is, however, really good at reflecting light onto those switches on the wall. There was that ring of light there. We could stand in the middle of it and shine some light up to the switch on the wall. And it's just going to get a total kick out of that, grin real weird, and open the door for us. Inside was a small key, and you may have noticed that there was a locked door back here. Heading in here, this is pretty funny here in the footage. I'm going to be skipping a little bit of this, because I really struggle with this room, and there's absolutely no reason for that. Basically, we've got a section of wall here that we want to climb up, and there's these smaller sections that kind of move. And it's sort of funny because I sit here for like 3 minutes trying to get up this thing, and I just keep on messing up and I keep on falling. And then at some point I'm like, wait a second, what am I doing? We can just use the hook shot and just go straight to the top and skip that whole thing. So I went ahead and skipped me struggling real bad. I'm not trying to hide it. Trust me, no one enjoys laughing at me more than me. But it was just a waste of time. In any case, we've come up here, and there's yet another Triforce symbol on the ground. This is like the 3rd one in this dungeon. They really like Zelda's Lullaby here in the Spirit Temple. And in this room right here, we're going to find the boss key, as well as some Fire Temple slugs. You, of course, can grab the Megaton Hammer, and if you hit the ground in this room, they'll all flip over upside down, and they're pretty easy to deal with. However, they're pretty easy to deal with even if you don't do that. And there's the boss key chest right there, sort of surrounded by fire. And I actually know a little bit of a trick to grab the boss key without lowering that fire. So if you roll at it, I think you do have to be on fire. So I think you get burned the first time, and then if you roll at it and press A right when you're in front of the chest before you get blown back, you can actually grab that boss key without even completing this puzzle. But then it was at this point I was like, wait a second, I should probably show how to do that normally. And this is where it kind of gets sort of funny. I actually don't remember how to do this. So I'm looking at stuff with the lens of truth, and I'm using the hook shot, and I'm like, what? And I can tell by the look that these doors here are fake. They're sort of not flush with the wall. So I decide to run around here and blow all of these up. I'm like, I don't really know what I'm looking for, but I'm just going to blow everything up. And then hopefully the answer will jump out at me, and there you go. By hitting that eyeball switch, it's going to create another platform. And then you can hop up here and then press the switch, which removes the fire, revealing an open boss chest in our case. Tag you're it. And we will head back out, and we are almost done with the Spirit Temple. Coming up these stairs, we're going to find a pretty memorable room for me. I just seem to remember this room a lot. Whenever I think about the Spirit Temple, I think of this room. So there you go. You got a big mirror on the wall, so you know some light's going to be passing through this way. And otherwise, we got this switch on the other side of the bars here, and at first glance, you might think to yourself that you can't do anything with it. You know, on this side of the bars, that is. But yes, actually, if you swing through the bars, you can actually trigger that and open the door for yourself. And here we go. We got some almost natural-looking caves in this portion of the dungeon. I think this is kind of cool. Kind of an interesting contrast to the, brick walls that we've been seeing elsewhere in the dungeon. And past me is really struggling to get the mirror shield to shine some light up at that switch. And having done that, it looks like I didn't need to do it anyway. Just gave me a garbage chest. Got some interesting bubbles in here. These are different than the ones we usually see. These kind of spin around, and that's kind of it. Otherwise, we've got one of these rotating mirrors here. And I'm kind of turning this into place before really showing why we would even want to do this. But it may or may not be obvious, but there's actually a spot on the wall right there that you can actually blow away with a bomb. So we'll go ahead and do that. And there's actually going to be another mirror inside this section. Taking a quick swing at that bubble there. But I guess he's not very aggressive, so we'll just let him be. He's not such a bad guy. Inside here, I think we're finding what may be the loneliest lizard. Because before that wall came down, he was just chilling in here by himself, I guess. But there we go. We got the light sort of bouncing around through those caves. And I guess I'm going to open up this chest just to see what was inside. I worked hard to get that switch to light up after all. And now we got some light coming through the bars here, hitting this mirror. And we'll be able to hop down here and shine that light onto the switch on the wall. And this is just kind of a fun, exciting moment in the Spirit Temple. You get lowered down here, and at first you don't really know where you are. But then you see the face of that big old statue, and everything kind of makes sense. And then this may not be so obvious, but what we're actually going to do is shine the light on the face of the statue, which is going to just make that stone there sort of break away. And then this is the last gotcha here in the Spirit Temple. There's that door that you can hookshot to. And you might think to yourself that you may need to find a way to open that door, but if you just get close to it, just by shooting yourself over there, it just sort of opens the moment you get there. And here we've got a cutscene sort of reintroducing us to Twinrova. This is the boss of the Spirit Temple. We're not going to be fighting them just yet. This is the first time that we're seeing them in our video here, but we actually, if you were playing the game, you actually would have seen them in the cutscene where they kidnapped Nabooru. But anyway, they're going to talk some smack, and then introduce us to sort of a new and improved Iron Knuckle. This is just kind of a bigger one. Or bigger armor, that is. I guess I'm not really sure if it's taller. But as far as I know, this fight goes essentially exactly the same as the previous Iron Knuckle fights. The only difference is you don't strip away its armor. Or you do. It's just the fight ends the moment that happens, as you'll see here. So here we go. No difference in strategy. Going to be doing the exact same thing. If you missed it, I basically like to jump slash in, hopefully after it does an attack. And then I kind of backflip out. That was not good timing. It was sort of funny there. I could actually see, I brought up my shield as I ate that attack. Sort of just an automatic reflex, I guess, because even during the time of this recording, I know that you can't defend against Iron Knuckle attacks. I don't think I mentioned that. It's just those axe attacks, I guess, are just so big and heavy that they just pass right through your shield. And normally that's kind of where the Iron Knuckle would shed some armor and it would start to get faster. But in this case here, as the armor gets pulled away, we actually find Nabooru inside, who is very confused. Apparently we were fighting Nabooru the entire time. I don't know if the spells Twinrova cast on her made her stronger, strong enough to carry that axe, but I kind of like to think that she's actually just buff as hell. Like she was maybe a bodybuilder at a previous point in her life. So anyway, Twinrova is going to continue to talk down on all of us, and they're going to teleport Nabooru away. And that is actually going to be the last that we see of her until after the Spirit Temple. And Twinrova is going to disappear, but they're actually not very far away. They're in the very next room. And this is kind of funny here. I don't really know why I did this, but I decided I kind of want to see if I can break that throne. Apparently it is pretty sturdy. The Megaton Hammer didn't even touch it. And anyway, here we go. This will be the real boss fight with Twinrova here. No more Iron Knuckles, no more teleporting away. Not really a whole lot for me to say at this point, so I'll just let them have their moment, do their little intro. So there we go, Twinrova, finally seeing their title card. And yes, it may not have been completely apparent before. You may have guessed it, but one of the sisters is sort of an affinity for fire and the other one is frost. And we're actually going to use that contrast against them, if you will. So basically what's going to happen is the sisters will attack at random, and we're actually going to use the mirror shield to reflect the first sister's attack onto the second one. So what I like to do, and what you should probably do, is kind of find one of the back corners of this arena. That way you have the best chance of seeing both sisters. And yes, this is sort of an annoying phase, because as you could see, I was pretty confident that I had hit that sister with that attack, and it just didn't go through. Sometimes that happens. It doesn't help that aiming with the shield is not something that, even at this point in the game, you don't really have a whole lot of practice doing it. So it can probably take a few tries to start dealing damage, but you just got to be persistent. Don't be afraid to sort of reposition, depending on where the sisters are. They kind of fly all over the place, and sometimes as you think you're in a good spot, and all of a sudden they'll be flying above you, and you may decide, you know what, I should probably switch corners. It's not a problem at all. It's something you'll need to do. Try not to get frustrated if everything looks like it's perfect and you're all lined up, and then all of a sudden the sister that you're aiming for flies off the screen and you can't turn your shield enough to actually make the connection. This is probably one of the most RNG intensive fights in Ocarina of Time. There you go. I just kind of got ripped off right there. Not a problem. Apparently I dealt enough damage to move on to the second phase. And here Twinrova is actually going to combine. And here we're going to see kind of a change in the way the mirror shield works. This is sort of something we won't ever see in the game again. But basically she's going to fire attacks at us. And as they hit the mirror shield is going to kind of charge up. You can see it glowing there, which is pretty awesome. And once you absorb 3 attacks of the same element, the element will actually fire out of the mirror shield. Here it comes. So I'm actually stepping forward, and a bunch of ice flew out of the mirror shield, which was pretty cool. And then once she's hit with that, you can jump the gap and deal as much damage to her as you can. And then once she floats back up, you want to get back and get ready for another cycle. So it looks like we got fire this time. Luckily, I don't think she switches elements mid-cycle. I seem to recall that being a thing, but I've beaten this boss quite a few times, and I've never gotten an ice in the middle of charging up fire. Which doesn't actually seem to be like that's a possible thing. But there we go. We got our flamethrower mirror shield, which again, I wish that was in the game more, but that was basically the only time we'll see that. And it looks like we dealt enough damage to finish that one off. And this is kind of a funny little moment in Ocarina of Time. The sisters are actually going to split apart again and talk as if they still have more fight left in them. Like maybe they have another form they're going to reveal or something like that. But as they're talking to us, some halos are going to appear above their heads, and it's going to sort of be revealed that they have already passed on. But before they go, they're going to sit here and argue with each other, which is pretty funny. So there they go, moving on to the other side. Rest in peace, Twinrova. So anyway, that was the Spirit Temple. Thank you so much for watching. That was basically the last full-fledged dungeon here in Ocarina of Time. Coming up next is going to be the Gerudo Training Ground, and after that it's going to be Ganon's Castle. So I hope you stay tuned for those, and I'll see you in the next video.